Now, rioters set fire and broke into hotels used to shelter asylum seekers in northern England on Sunday, as the country is faced with the worst social unrest it's seen in years. The violence was triggered by the stabbing of 3 young girls in Southport in the northwest of England last week. The far right has seized on and spread a wave of disinformation, including false claims that the attacker was an immigrant to mobilize anti-Muslim and anti-immigrant protest. Police say the suspect was born in Britain. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has condemned the weekend's violent protest, which saw at least 147 people arrested since Saturday night. He says there will be a standing army of specialist officers to help deal with the street violence that has swept the country over the past few days.
I had a COBRA meeting this morning, which was an opportunity that I took to thank the police for their work over the last few days, to express my support for the police officers who have been injured and the communities impacted by this mindless thuggery. There are a number of actions that came out of the meeting. The first is we will have a standing army of specialist officers, public duty officers, so that we'll have enough officers to deal with this where we need them. The second is we'll ramp up criminal justice. There have already been hundreds of arrests. Some have appeared in court this morning. I've asked for early consideration of the earliest naming and identification of those involved in the process, who will feel the full force of the law. And thirdly, I've been absolutely clear that the criminal law applies online as well as offline, and I'm assured that that's the approach that is being taken. Whatever the apparent motivation, this is not protest, it is pure violence, and we will not tolerate attacks on mosques or our Muslim communities. So the full force of the law will be visited on all those who are identified as having taken part in these activities. In relation to the police, I'm absolutely clear that we will have the officers we need, where we need them, to deal with this disorder. And that is why the standing army has been set up, specialist officers ready to be deployed to support communities. On the question of prisons, firstly, we're monitoring it on a daily basis. I'm appalled that we've been put in this position by the previous government, that is even a discussion, it's even a question that you have to ask me. But we will make this work and ensure that we've got the places that are needed to bring the perpetrators swiftly to justice. So on both those fronts, I'm confident that we can absolutely make sure that those engaged in this activity do feel the full force of the law.
Well, for more on this, we can cross to London and speak with Arise European Affairs analyst Dr. Marek. Good to see you, and thanks for your time as always. Not too good a story coming in from Britain. Help us make sense of what the developments are at the moment.
Well, the first thing to notice, what's happening in Great Britain is part of a much bigger phenomenon, because in all areas now there are movements against immigrants and against tourists even, and in Great Britain this is now spilled over into a far bigger protest than in other countries. This protest, however, is limited because the average person lends it no support, and therefore there's no reason to suppose that the police will not be able to handle it.
We listened to Keir Starmer there. He's been so emphatic and categorical about what this is about. What can you tell us? He says this is clearly not a protest, but some kind of riotous crowd who are acting on some motive.
Well, that's a matter of how he chooses to present it. The point is that some of them may have a point of view. The question is whether they can take to violence in the streets, and this obviously is unacceptable. What is quite clear is he's quite determined to suppress these riots, and also he's quite determined to see that as a result of the peace returns. However, there is a background here of large numbers of immigrants arriving, and also it's somewhat worrying he has decided to use the term standing army, because I assume they're part of the police. And therefore, if correctly handled, this will be a protest which will simply disappear. And I hope that's what will happen. What is clear, though, is that the whole issue has been coming to the fore for some time, and it has boiled over. But I can see quite clearly, as you can, that the average person is in no way supportive or engaged, and as a result, the protests will eventually fail.
Let's talk about how widespread the demonstrations are and perhaps see how it's affecting some of these areas. Dr. Marek.
Well, owing to the fact that we now have an online system, yes, the internet, protests can spread rapidly from one place. This was quite evident in the sense of blockading petrol. This can be tomorrow, as we've seen, for example, in Europe, where farmers can protest from several areas simultaneously. And therefore, it's by no means surprising that if it happens in one place, it can happen in several. What is clear, though, is that in each case, the protest is limited in numbers. This is not a mass movement. And therefore, because, of course, the internet can be monitored, I don't think the fact that it's in several places will have much of an impact.
And Dr. Marek, how do these protests compare to previous protests in the UK?
They are actually far more widespread than, for example, many in the past. But this, I repeat, is owing to the internet and the social media. And also, they are far more violent than before, because on the whole, you don't get that violent a protest in Great Britain. However, to set it in context, violent protests have occurred before, and therefore this is not absolutely new or novel. It has been, the social media has been used before. Again, this is by no means novel. The key to the situation is what the average person feels. And here it is quite clear from the numbers involved that the average person is not part of this movement. And as a result, it will fail.
And just before I let you go, Dr. Marek, what do you see as the likely outcome of these protests?
That is a very interesting question, because it is clear that some people are upset about the level of immigration. The previous government said they would do something about it, but this did not happen. And the same thing now faces the new regime. I would imagine that although they can control the movement, unless in the long run they bring in some sort of legislation which weakens the support of what support there is for the protesters, it might occur again. Please remember, this is in the background of what's happening around the world. And this is not going to go away, because whether it's targeting tourists in Barcelona or Venice, or the riots here, or the situation in France, which is admittedly of the far left, but also riots, I anticipate there being riots again in the future, simply because of the fact that if there is no solution, therefore the people will take, some people that is, to be more accurate, will take to the streets. Hopefully, as I say, nothing unpleasant will occur as a result of this rioting.
Hopefully, sir. I'd like to thank you as always, Dr. Marek. Many thanks for your insights.